Today, we're going to try and make sense of an event that really shook Canada to its core. We're going to walk through the anatomy of the tragedy in the small town of Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia, to better understand what happened, who was affected, and the really tough questions that we're all still asking. 36. That's the total number of casualties, both injured and deceased. It's an absolutely staggering figure. To put it in perspective, this now stands as the mass shooting with the highest number of casualties in Canadian history. That number alone tells you the immense scale of what we're talking about.
And where did this happen? In Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia. This is a small, really tight-knit mining town of just over 2,000 people. A local councillor even described it as an incredibly safe community. But on February 10th, 2026, that fundamental sense of security was just shattered.
So, to really wrap our heads around how something like this could even happen, we need to first look at the timeline of events. The attack essentially unfolded in two distinct, horrific acts. And it didn't actually start at the school. It started at a private home. The sequence here is chillingly fast. The violence began at the perpetrator's own home before moving about 1.5 kilometers away to the secondary school. The first 911 call from the school itself came in at 2:20 p.m. And, the police response was incredibly quick. They were on the scene in just 2 minutes. But here's the thing. The official public alert didn't go out for another 55 minutes. And this right here shows you that gap I was just talking about. For nearly a full hour, while this horrific attack was underway, the wider community had no official warning. This 55-minute delay has understandably become a major focus in the review of what happened and how emergency alerts are handled. Of course, beyond the timelines and the numbers, there's the devastating human cost. Because behind every statistic is a person, a family, a story. So now we turn to the names and faces of those who were lost and those who fought so incredibly hard to survive. We want to take a moment to acknowledge each life that was taken. At the family home, Jennifer Jacobs and her 11-year-old son Emmett were killed. And at the school, education assistant Shonda of Uganda Durand died alongside 5 students, Abel, Kylie, Zoe, Tiki, and Ezekiel. They were in grades 7 and 8, just 12 and 13 years old. It's just heartbreaking. And words from the families, they give you a sense of who these kids were. This quote from the mother of 12-year-old Tiki Lampert, "A blazing light in the darkness." It's just a small but powerful glimpse into one of the bright lives that were cut short. It reminds you that behind every name on that list is a universe of love and potential. But, incredible bravery also emerged from that darkness. 12-year-old Maya Gaibalea apparently tried to lock the library door to save her classmates. She was critically wounded, shot in the head and neck, but even then, her friends saw her finger move and they carried her out to safety. It's just an extraordinary story of survival and the courage of these kids. Now, to even begin to grapple with the why of this tragedy, we have to look at the known facts about the perpetrator. And let's be clear, this isn't about justification. It's about understanding if there were pre-incident indicators, red flags that might have been missed. The perpetrator was 18-year-old Jesse Van Rutzeler, a former student who dropped out years earlier. The investigation quickly revealed a documented history of trouble. Police had been called to the family home multiple times for mental health crises. Van Rutzeler had been apprehended under the Mental Health Act more than once. And then there's the online activity, reposting content on TikTok about another school shooter. But the most critical point for many is this. Firearms had previously been seized from the home by the RCMP, only to be returned after a petition. And then there's this, a warning sign from the digital world that is just deeply disturbing. On the gaming platform Roblox, Van Rutzeler had created and shared a simulation of a mass shooting in a shopping mall. Now, it wasn't widely viewed, but it points to a clear preoccupation with mass violence, almost like a digital rehearsal for a real-world horror. So when you look at that whole history, you can't help but ask broader, systemic questions. This wasn't some sudden snap. It feels like a slow build with multiple points where intervention might have been possible, and that's forcing Canada to confront some really difficult issues. This is really the heart of the matter, isn't it? With a known history of police calls and involuntary apprehensions for mental health crises, how did this individual fall through the cracks of the very systems that are designed to prevent exactly this kind of outcome? The key piece of the puzzle here is the BC Mental Health Act. It's a law that gives authorities the power to apprehend someone for a psychiatric assessment if they're a risk, but critics have pointed to what they call a revolving door problem, where patients are often discharged without the kind of long-term, robust follow-up plans needed to really ensure their own safety and the safety of the public.
And this is the other crucial question that has really dominated the public conversation. The fact that police had previously taken guns out of that home, only for the perpetrator to be armed with multiple weapons on the day of the attack, that has raised some really serious concerns about our firearms regulations.
Okay, so let's break this down, because it can get a little confusing, but it's a vital point. The firearms that were seized in the past were, in fact, returned to their lawful owner. However, and this is key, the RCMP have stated that the two main weapons used in the attack, the modified rifle and the long gun, were not part of that previous seizure. Van Roetselar's own miner's license had expired, and no guns were registered in her name. So the investigation is still trying to figure out where exactly those attack weapons came from. And finally, let's look at what happens when, in the face of just unimaginable horror, a community has to find a way to come together. This is the story of Tumbler Ridge's response, and it's a powerful testament to resilience in the face of overwhelming grief. In a town this small, where the mayor said, "I will know every victim," the response was immediate and deeply personal. A resilient community fund was started, tapping into a spirit that was really forged through years of economic downturns and even natural disasters. It's just a community that knows how to pull together when things get tough. And the tragedy resonated far beyond that small town. The Prime Minister, Mark Carney, along with other federal party leaders, visited the community, offering this message of national solidarity. It was a signal that this remote town was not alone in its grief. The entire country was grieving with them. Look, the path forward for Tumbler Ridge is going to be long and incredibly difficult. And for the rest of Canada, this tragedy is a painful wake-up call, forcing a hard look at our systems for mental health, for firearms control, and for emergency response. So the ultimate question isn't just how a community heals, but what a nation absolutely must learn to prevent this from ever happening again.